When we're born, a ladder, Rumi said, when you are born, a ladder is placed before you to help you to escape from this world, to teach you that you're in this world, but you're not of this world. And you're always moving toward this place of, and at the top of the ladder is this thing called divine love. And it's always a movement toward that. And many times, the rungs on that ladder are rungs that are tough, are what you call crises. But in fact, they are great teachers. I haven't had alcohol in my body in 25 years. I don't look back on the days that I did drink or do drugs and so on as anything other than just tremendous teachers for me. They were probably one of the most important decisions I ever made in my life, and I was never even an alcoholic. I quit drinking because my teacher in India said, if you want to reach your highest maximum potential, you'll have to live a life of total sobriety because you're destroying brain cells when you put alcohol into your system. And you came here with big dharma. And if you want to fulfill that dharma, you have to keep your brain, where it's always growing instead of where it's always deteriorating. And that was the day I just decided that I wasn't going to do that. I've been through divorce. I've been through being left. I've been through cancer. I've been through a heart attack. These are all, every single one of those, like every advance that you make in your life, is almost always preceded by some kind of a fall, some kind of a, it's like when I always give the example, when I was in high school, I was on the track team. I was the high jumper on the track team. Now, I didn't jump very high because I'm white. And white men don't jump. They even made a movie about it, okay? But anyway, so the way that you get over the bar is you run up to the bar as fast as you can, you get down as low as you can. And in the process of getting down low, you generate the energy to propel yourself over the bar. That's how and the lower you get and the faster you go, the more energy you can generate that way, you propel yourself to a higher place. That's sort of a metaphor for everything in life. If you are in a place of crisis, and you're in a place of where you're low and down and hurt, that almost always means that you're going to have a spiritual elevation. You're going to move yourself to a higher place. That will give you the energy to propel yourself upward. And I've just always believed that now stay in a place of gratitude for everything that comes along. And instead of, I've always said there are three ways to reach enlightenment, okay? One is enlightenment through suffering. So with enlightenment through suffering, what you do is you have a experience. Let's say you did a lot of drinking, or you were carousing, or whatever it may be, you were sickly or whatever, and then or somebody breaks up with you and so on, and then you suffer, and oh my God, how did this happen, and why did I do that, and why did she leave me, and how could that have, and then you go through like 10 years. So that's a 10-year chunk of your life where you're suffering, and ultimately you get to this place where you finally, and almost everyone will tell you, about that crisis. When I look back on it, I realize that it was what allowed me to get to a higher place. So that's one way. The second way is enlightenment through living in the present. That is, when a crisis comes along, and you find yourself upset or hurt or whatever, instead of waiting 10 more years of suffering, what you do is you stop yourself right in this moment and you say, what can I do what do I have to learn here? How can I get down on my knees and be thankful to God for this opportunity which is being presented to me, and so on. So you're taking a hold of it in the present moment, which is what I do now with any crisis that may show up in my life. Is I just say I don't have any more 10-year periods. You only get so many of those, and then it's checkout time. So it's so now it's like you get a hold of it right now. You say, what do I have to learn from this? Like I've been suffering with this neck thing for 7 or 8 months, but every day I say thank you for it, and how much that it has taught me to be more compassionate toward people who live in chronic pain, for one example, and so many others, to be less judgmental, to say, to find the place within me where I can heal myself and so on. So it becomes an impetus for my growth. That's the second way to enlightenment. Now the third way to enlightenment is where you want to get to, and that's where you can get out in front of the crisis before it arrives. And you can see it coming. And you know that you can play it out you can play out the whole dialogue in advance. So that you're in an argument, whatever, with your spouse or whatever, and and you know that she says something, and normally your way of reacting is, well, then, all right, if you think, I'm going to make me wrong, then I'm going to make you wrong. And if I say this, and you play out the dialogue, if I say this, then she's going to say that. And then I'm going to say this, and then she's going to say, then I'm going to do this, and then I'm probably going to walk out, and I'm going to be pissed off for a while. And then, it's like, and you play out, but you do this instantaneously. And you stop and you say, honey, that's a good point. You're right about that. I'll really give it some thought. And it doesn't matter. You have a choice to be right or to be kind, and you just pick kind. It's just very simple. Nothing changes. She's still wrong. At least in your mind she is, or whatever. But you're free. You're free. And so you've gotten out in front of it. And you can go through life living peacefully and in grace by, instead of suffering and instead of struggling in the present moment to figure out what the problem is, you just start seeing that stuff coming, so that when you're walking down a street and across the street you see someone that might be dangerous, or this might be a situation I don't want to be in, instead of going over there, and even potentially creating some kind of, you just say, well, you know what, I just think I'll just walk around this way. And you've avoided it all. You don't even have to deal with it. You don't have to get your macho ego involved in it. You're just simply getting to a point where you can anticipate this, since there's no time in the universe anyway, then you just let the time thing go, and you just create for yourself exactly the world that you want to be. And as I've said hundreds and thousands of times, it's on my stationery, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. The world is a different world when you look at it from, like this neck thing that I have. I look at it totally differently than I would have even 10 years ago. And now it's just grace. It's just grace, and whatever it is I'm to learn from it, I'm getting. More conscious of your divinity, just conscious of your divinity, that you have the power to negotiate the presence of this energy to do incredible things for yourself. But there are 3 things you have to do. The first is you have to have what I call recognition of this force. And recognition of this force is nothing more than simply saying to yourself, I am open to the idea that there is a force that is greater than I am, to which I am always connected, that is everywhere at once, and no place that it is not. And I would like to just say that it is available to me. You don't have to have proof of it. You don't have to have anybody confirm it. It is just simply an awareness that it exists. See, once you recognize that this force that opens the flowers, that keeps the planet in alignment, that grows your fingernails every night and beats your heart, independent of your opinion about it. You go to sleep at night, you look at your fingernails the next morning, they're longer than they were the night before, and you're sound asleep. Not only that, but whatever force it was that grew yours, grew the person next to you, and grew the people across the oceans as well. There's a force that's growing everybody's fingernails, whether they like it or not, and growing their hair, well, most of them, and beating their hearts, and circulating their food, and opening the flowers, and turning, acorns into oak trees, and turning embryos into human beings. There's a force. There's something, I can't see it, I don't know what it is, I recognize it. If you recognize it, and that there's no place that it's not, the beauty of that is that it's also then in everything that you would like to attract into your life. And here you've just taken one step towards diminishing the role of the ego in your life. If you can recognize that there is a power in the universe that is that is part of you, if there's no place that it is not, then it has to be in you. And if it is in you, and there's no place that it's not, it also has to be in whatever you'd like to attract into your life. So all you have to say is, I'm already connected to that which I would like to attract into my life. That what you want, wants you. All you have to do is somehow figure out a way to realign your inner intention and recognize, I am not separate from it, I am connected to it, it just hasn't shown up in my space yet. But I'm already connected to it. That's a very powerful insight. That's why people at higher levels of consciousness can manifest, because there's no delay between what they put in their attention on and having it show up. It's why the gift of fish and loaves is the ability to see hungry people and to think food, and it shows up. And even the least among you can do all that I have done.
It's all within you to be able to do that. So that shifting takes place first and foremost with the recognition that there is a force, there is a power. That's how you treasure your divinity. The second thing that you do is what I call realization. And realization is the time in your life when you stop telling yourself that I believe this or don't believe this on the basis of what somebody else says or does. It comes from my own personal direct experience. It's the only thing I will rely upon. I will not rely upon the written word. I will not rely upon the spoken word. I will not rely upon someone else out there telling me that this is what God is or how it works. I will rely upon the realization of it through my own direct conscious experience. And I will not try to persuade anybody else. I will not listen to or argue with anybody about whether it's real or not real, whether it works or doesn't work. I know it. Be still and know. And you have that knowing, and the realization is there, and you trust in that realization. I trust in my own experience. I've had it. I have talked to this force. I have seen it work. I've put my attention on it. I've been able to manifest what I want in my life. I've been able to heal myself. I've been able to help heal others. I've been able to feel comfort in times when others feel sadness. These are all things that I know come to me through my direct experience of God. And it doesn't matter what anybody else out there says or does. Realization. I now realize it and trust in that. That's the second step. And the third I call reverence. And reverence is where you begin to have a daily commune with this power, with this force. That you are not only aware of it, but you are communing quietly with it. You're communing quietly with it. The way to get to this place of inner peace and consequently to experience higher awareness is to shut down the internal frenzy. The Chinese sage Sengchan Zen gave us the following piece of wisdom. Stop talking, stop thinking, and there is nothing you will not understand. Return to the root and you will find meaning. Look inward, and in a flash you will conquer the apparent and the void. He is counseling us to simply stop talking and stop thinking. This is the third key to the sense of peacefulness that is a part of the way of the sacred quest. I want to make it clear that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the experience of the presence of God. As you learn to shut down your inner dialogue and become more peaceful, you will begin to know the presence of God in your life. That presence will be felt in both your body and your inner world. Beliefs are removed. Belief is replaced with knowing. At different times in my past, both alcohol and other substances were a part of my own life path. Through meditation, I was able to leave alcohol behind, and I have never touched it since. But with other substances, I believed I could use them when I chose to for an energizing effect beyond anything I had ever experienced. I was able to use them, enjoy increased energy, and leave them alone for long periods of time. But a time came when I knew I was making foolish and non-spiritual choices connected with seeking out these insidious substances. My personal challenge became to rid myself of these insidious habits. I tried reading my way out of it, but I went back. I tried acupuncture, discussions with experts, and herbal cures, but I went back. I was determined that I would no longer play around with any substance, but I went back. Then I had what I call a holy instant, which was for me a divine experience. At 4:05 a.m. on a January morning, I was meditating. In the still quiet of that meditation, the thought of never again using a substance became real. It was my first absolutely direct experience of God. My entire inner screen of awareness became a bright luminescence as I heard a voice say, "You've tried everything else. Why not try me?" I have never in my life known such peace and certainty that God was with me and around me. I felt overwhelmed by the bliss I experienced. I listened to that voice, felt the presence of God, and have not since experienced the slightest desire to go back to any substance. I have debated with myself about putting this very personal story on this tape.
That is, my ego self debated with my higher self. But I knew my experience with chemical substances involved helping others to look within, instead of outside of themselves, for both the excitement and the peace their higher self has for them. If, in my telling this story, one person who experiments with any substance and knows that it is out of control decides to shut down the inner turmoil and seek the help of their loving presence, then it will have been worth it. You needn't have the challenge of getting off drugs to find value applying this third key to higher awareness. It works the same way for every experience you are ready to transcend. Getting to silence and then having God be your personal knowing presence. Getting to silence requires conscious effort on your part. When going within, use the metaphor of the pebble dropping through the various levels of your mind. While the pebble drops, be the witness. Observe compassionately all your chatter and thoughts as you descend to the unified field. When you notice your mind overly crowded with thoughts, practice not focusing on anything just for a few moments. Tell yourself, my mind is full of the disturbance of chatter and thoughts. I'm going to try to spend 5 minutes without any thoughts bombarding me. I'll dismiss every thought just for a few moments. Use your breath as a means to keep your mind from chattering away ceaselessly. You can do this by focusing your compassionate witness on your breathing. Breathe in deeply, excluding any thoughts as you concentrate on the in-breath. Then exhale slowly and fully with the same concentration. When thoughts appear, as they will, know that they are signaling you to return to mindfulness of your breathing in and out. Your heartbeat can also be used as a focal point for the witness. Return to the steady, rhythmic beat of your heart when you notice thoughts intruding. When you find your thoughts just below the surface in the analyzing level, think of a rose. As you replace the analyzing with the beauty of a rose, you might want to recall this verse by the poet Rabindranath Tagore. Do not carry a rose to our beloved, because in it is already embodied a message which, unlike our language of words, cannot be analyzed. That is, remember that the habit of analyzing or picking things apart in a judging fashion keeps you from knowing the truth that is at the center of your being. The rose needs no analyzing, as the poet reminds us. It simply is. The same is true of you. At the synthesizing level, when you are feeling the beauty and unity of life, you may discover that you are entering thoughts of pleasure about enjoying this spiritual space. Let go of those thoughts too. The ego enjoys convincing you that you are better than others because you are more spiritual or have deeper understanding. It swims through your consciousness with thoughts like those. When it does, gently send it elsewhere for this time of meditation or prayer. I have a dear friend, many of you know. We've put out tapes together. We've appeared on stages all over the world together. He's like a brother to me. His name is Dr. Deepak Chopra, a medical doctor, and a dear and close friend. And whenever anything is going on in my family, if I'm having a problem with one of my children or in my own life, and if I call him up and I'll say, Deepak, or his wife Rita, I'll say, Deepak, what do you think I should do? He always has the same answer. Meditate. I'll say, yes, Deepak, I understand meditate, but I said, what do you think? He said, Wayne, go deep inside and meditate. Always meditate. I'll say, will you put Rita on? Wayne, meditate. I say, all right. And you know, I've learned a lot in meditation. But what I know most about getting quiet and getting peaceful is this, that there's only one power in the universe, and it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it soul, spirit, consciousness, God. You can call it Louise. You can call it anything that you want. But as Alan Watts said, you can't get wet from the word water. It's not what we call something that gives it its substance. And this one power, this one force that flows through everything and allows everything to be, is indivisible. You can't cut it in half. You can't divide it. It's one. It's knowing the one. And everything in your life is almost always given a division. Male, female, young, old, tall, short, black, white, good, bad, up, down. These are all dichotomies. These are all these splits that we all have in our lives. The whole physical world that we live in and are immersed in, it's always immersed in this division. But we have to learn to fuse the dichotomies. And in fusing the dichotomies and blending the one, that's what silence does for us. That's why embracing silence is so powerful. In Zen, they say it's the It's the space between the bars that holds the tiger. And it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. These words that are coming out of my mouth right now come out of the silence. And finding that silence and embracing it means that you go to the place within you that you cannot divide. Just like you can't divide the source, the one, the spirit. You can't divide that either. It's only one. So when you go into your silence and you begin to practice meditation and you begin to make this a part of your life and embrace silence, what you discover is this is where you'll come to know your source. You'll make conscious contact with your source. I can't tell you how many people that have come to me who have suffered from serious illnesses, who've been given diagnoses that it's terminal and that you can't do it, who have gone out to the wilderness and have decided that I am going to commune with nature. And the transcendentalists, Thoreau and Emerson, they believed that nature was our source and that we were all products of nature. And if you can get back to your source, if you can get back to that feeling of being with spirit, that's where healing can take place. And I've had wonderful stories of people who told me that it was when I began to embrace that silence that I began to feel more connected to my source. Embrace silence because it's a way to come to know God, to know your source. Both are indivisible. And the only experience you can have in your daily life that even comes close to a spiritual awakening is silence.
I urge you to meditate because it will bring you more peace, remove stress, improve your surroundings, and deflect negativity. All of this and more will definitely show up when you meditate regularly. I include the embracing of silence as one of my top 10 secrets for inner peace and success, primarily because it's the only vehicle I know of for making conscious contact with God. God is that which is indivisible. There's only one omnipresent presence called God. This presence is everywhere and is a force that creates and sustains life. It can never be divided or cut up into pieces. There's only one power in the universe, not two. You will find your answers in the silence. Remember, it's out of the void, the emptiness, that everything is created. When you write a musical note, the silence from which it comes is just as much a part of the note as is the sound. So it is with healing anything or any relationship. Going into the quiet and listening will inspire you. I can't imagine speaking or writing without first going to God in silence. I seek alone time and space to allow my inspiration to emerge. The wilderness is therapy. Any time in your life, when you're feeling out of sorts in any way, go to nature and find your peace. Keep your silent communion with God to yourself. Everything that you wish to manifest emerges from spirit, from the silence. You don't use your ego to manifest. In fact, ego can inhibit the creative process. For this reason, I urge you not to divulge your private insights, what you intend to create. As St. Paul said, that which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. When you talk about your emerging, manifesting ideas and relate your insights to others, you often feel the need to explain and defend them. What happens is the ego has entered, and once the ego is present, the manifesting stops. Silence is where manifesting occurs, so keep your potential miracles in the treasured silence that you embrace as often as possible. You can rely upon it and enjoy basking in the serenity and inner peace that silence and meditation always bring.
Now let's take a look at what I mean by the word problem. In my heart, I feel that there is really only one problem for any of us. That is, when we allow ourselves to separate from God. But in a very real sense, we can never be separate from God. Yet, we often still believe that we have problems. The problems of disease, discord, fear, anxiety, scarcity, disappointments in others, and so on, are all in our minds. When we truly reconnect to our source, these feelings disappear. I use the word problem as if it truly exists, yet I know every time I use it that it's an illusion. So every time you hear the word, know that I perceive it as an illusion created by ourselves because we have separated ourselves from God. There is a powerful line in A Course in Miracles which reminds me of this lesson. It takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters, and circumstances are helpful. We can learn to view every crisis as an opportunity, which wouldn't necessarily make life easier, but would make it more satisfying. We would never be able to view anything as a negative occurrence because we'd see everything as useful. Our conditioning is so strong that we often have far greater faith in our problems than we do in our ability to no longer have them. We often display a much greater faith in the power of cancer or AIDS than we do in the power to heal them. The evil, the pain, the anguish are of our own creation, and they represent opportunities to gain greater learning. I ask you to keep an open mind as we travel this path of healing to bring peace back into your life on a permanent basis. And now let me speak to you about what I mean by the word solution. I once sat in on a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The words of a sign on the wall kept gnawing at me throughout that meeting. It read, "Your best thinking got you here." I thought how true that is and how it applies to all of the circumstances of our lives. Our best thinking is exactly where all of our so-called problems exist. If we couldn't think about them, they would not exist. What we need is a change in thinking to realize that a connection to the divine is what eradicates our problems. You cannot send problems out of your life by attacking them or understanding them in more depth. Instead, you correct the error in your thinking that produces the problem in the first place. Once you bring a correction to the problem, it no longer has any validity, and it disappears. We correct these errors with the creation of a new spiritual delivery system. This is the basic introduction to the idea of having a spiritual solution available for every single problem.
Here are some specific suggestions for removing doubt from your inner inventory. Keep in mind that doubt not only inhibits your sacred quest, but can also be a destructive force in your daily existence. Make a decision that you are going to meet the invisible God within, the loving presence, so that you will know her. This means being willing to spend time in the inner silence of your being. Create the time and space for quieting and listening. Do nothing else, but do this daily. Keep in mind always that doubt is produced by your ego. Doubt is not a part of your higher spiritual self. With this awareness, you can learn to observe your doubt rather than choose to own it. Make a list of the beliefs that you still hang on to which no longer serve you. Seeing them in writing will help you identify how absurd it is to stay rooted in the beliefs of others. As you examine your beliefs, see how many start with should and shouldn't. These kinds of sentences were your earliest training and may still occupy such a large space inside you that you no longer have room for any new knowings. Keep in mind always that doubt is a mental experience. If you want a thought to disappear, you can very simply send it away in this moment, just as you can refuse to think an unpleasant thought in any moment because you are in charge of those thoughts. So can doubt be eradicated when it shows up. Say to yourself as if you are two people, the one talking and the one listening, "I have this doubt because I have allowed the persuasions of others to become my own beliefs. Now, I will think for myself and know that I do not have to live with doubt."